Okay, there it goes. Good morning, everyone. I'm calling this meeting of the Public Safety Communications Task Force to order. It is 11:17 on December 17th, 2025, and I'm Barbara Neal. As a reminder, the meeting is being recorded and the recording will be posted to the task force webpage following the meeting. We'll start with our usual roll call of task force members. Please verbally acknowledge your presence when I call your name. Dan Batesy.
Here.
Paul White.
Here.
Ron Kumitz.
Here.
Jim Mack.
Here.
Michael Wright.
Here.
Morning. And Mike Dunn just said he would join. He's not on just yet, but I imagine he will join shortly. So also joining us today is Emily Mullaney from the Department of Public Safety as our administrative support, and our project management partners, Rick, Dom, Elizabeth, and we have a new guest from Televate today, Joe Ross. Sorry, Joe. Welcome, everybody. And looks like we have Jason from Mission Critical Partners on the call today as well. I don't see any members of the public today, but maybe they'll join as we go along. So the first agenda item is approval of the agenda. It was distributed to task force members by email. It's also available on the webpage. Are there any changes needed to the agenda?
Barb, I'm not sure. I know you asked me to talk a little bit about the RFP process for records management system. I don't know if I can't remember. I looked at the agenda, but I can't remember if that made it on there. If you want me to do that, I'm happy to.
You know, it did not make it on there. I think maybe we should save that for the next meeting because it probably should be.
There's nothing urgent about it.
Okay, probably should be an agenda item that people are aware of. Okay, anything else? All right, so hearing nothing other than that, we'll consider today's agenda approved. And I'm just going to make a note here, add RFP process outline, I'll say, for next agenda. Okay. All right, then let's move on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was December 3rd at regular meeting number 68. Are there any changes needed to the minutes from December 3rd? Right, I'm hearing nothing. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve the minutes as printed.
Thanks, Jim.
I'll second that.
Was that Paul?
Second.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the minutes from December 3rd, raise your hand or signify by saying aye. Hands are up and the minutes are approved. Thank you, Ron. And I see Irene Renner has joined us this morning. Good morning, Irene.
Morning, everyone.
All right, we are moving on to, oh, and Mike Dunn just jumped in as well. Good morning, Mike. Morning, Mike.
Morning, Mike.
Good morning. Sorry for my delay, as usual.
That's okay. We're just moving on to project updates, and I'm going to hand it over rather to Dom.
All right, thank you, Barb, and good morning, everyone. A bit of a review, I think, from last time. Of course, at the beginning of December, the task force did present its preview, I guess we're calling it preview of recommendations that went to the legislature on December 1st, and we are awaiting feedback from that. I'm not sure if we've had any further feedback, but in addition, we have developed an outline for a more detailed report to prepare for the legislature, a report and potentially a presentation anticipated to be available in January to provide more information to the legislature on the recommendations. Additionally, Televate has put additional effort and further development into an improved LMR concept design that is consistent with the discussions that were had at the Tier 2 technology working group with regards to developing improved LMR communications based on uh, dispatch areas primarily for fire and EMS. And we are prepared to present that at today's meeting.
Sounds great, Dom. Thank you. Jason, do you have anything to add from Mission Critical's perspective?
Yeah, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. Questions for Dom on where we are with project updates before he moves into the LMR? Okay. That will take us to the next agenda item, which is the presentation of the Televate LMR proposal. So I will hand it back to Dom and you can direct it wherever you want to go from there.
Okay, great. Thanks. I will share a presentation. If you give me, bear with me just a minute, I'll share my screen and hopefully you can see that. I will try and
Yes.
go into presentation mode to make it
Yep, we can
hopefully
see that.
bigger for everyone. Okay, great. As I mentioned, we had discussions, during the Tier 2 working group sessions about an improved LMR concept based on a systems of systems approach with simulcast cells developed generally based on the dispatch group areas. We have developed that further, and that's what we'd like to present today. We'd like to review the current state of LMR communications within the state, talk about the concept of the improved design, show the simulcast cell, proposed cell map, site distribution, and then we have an analysis of each individual simulcast cell and an estimated budget. Key insights and trends are primarily pulled from the system planning document that we have been working with that was developed by MCP. So this is a review probably for most of you. The findings were that the state's public safety wireless environment is fragmented across various technologies and frequency bands. The majority of the technologies used are analog conventional, although there is some digital, primarily P25 networks, mostly in the law enforcement arena. Law enforcement primarily operates in the UHF frequency band, and fire and EMS generally operate in the VHF frequency band. And for those of you not radio familiar, VHF is a lower frequency band for public safety, generally between 150 megahertz and 170 megahertz. UHF is generally 450 to 470 megahertz. Also, the state, in the form of the Radio Technology Services, RTS, maintains systems for state operation, primarily for BSP, which is the UHF network. They also have networks for Fish and Wildlife and Agency of Transportation. Currently, RTS has plans based on the COPS grant that we have discussed various times in this group to upgrade and transition to a 10-zone UHF digital simulcast system for VSP. So that will add sites to improve coverage and also improve reliability of that network through some system facilities improvements such as generators, backhaul, etc. just a bit of an example of the fragmented state that we have, and this is for an example of fire dispatch in Addison County area. And we have presented this map previously, but this shows how the towns, primarily within Addison County here, a number of different towns are dispatched by the same entity, but they use and a lot of them are on the same frequency actually, but use a large selection of different repeaters at different sites. So you'll see the list on the left of the different repeaters, and those are represented in the map by the different colors. So it creates a somewhat of a difficult situation where the dispatcher has to identify, based on who they're trying to dispatch, the specific repeater to choose to send out the page or the tone or any type of communication. And when there are multiple, when a response requires multiple towns to respond, of course, then they have to do that several times. So it's a more of a difficult process, and we sought to make this easier and simpler.
So before you go on, Don, may I chime in a little bit here?
Please do.
So Jim knows this map and knows the complexity of dispatching for the multiple volunteer fire departments and emergency medical services within the county. And the affiliation has to be, when you affiliate with a communication over the radio network, you have to affiliate with a channel in your radio and tune to that, to a particular radio tower over which that frequency is being transmitted. And if you go from one end to the county to the other, you do not have the luxury of communicating with one another unless you have frequencies programmed into your radio, and you can also have access to a radio site that is covering a particular given area. Now, the reason we focus on the Land Mobile Radio Network, because it is essential communication network for both dispatching and first responders. We have a call coming in from a PSAP based on a very elegant design for your NG911 network, and for delivering a call to a given geographic area, to a PSAP, and then to a dispatch center. In order for the notification, the dispatch to be delivered to the field, it has to be sent out over the radio network. And so what we have is we have a patchwork statewide and siloed radio networks, and they're not interoperable unless we have the ability to see radio sites from one given location, and whether the responders have the discipline also to program given frequencies in their radios. The radio is not, and the network is not making a decision. The decision is being made on the geographic location of the first responder and that radio site. This is very archaic in today's technology availability to land mobile radio. So because of the way our networks are designed, siloed, not interoperable, multiple different operators of their individual networks, we really have a fairly chaotic ability to both dispatch and for responders to communicate while en route to the scene incident and when on the incident. There's also very few frequencies, and so we've got many challenges that are typical to Vermont, but not typical to how public safety, mission critical public safety radio has to work. So, this is an essential public safety communication network, similar, as important to the whole overall approach as the dispatch center requirements that we've been addressing.
Thanks, Rick. Any questions or other comments? Okay, moving on, just an overview of the design concept. I had mentioned earlier that Radio Technology Services is working to upgrade the current VSP system, which is a UHF-based system for the Vermont State Police, moving to a 10-zone digital simulcast system for improved coverage and higher reliability. So what that does is it groups various transmission sites, transmission towers, for example, into groups, into what we call simulcast cells. So a simulcast cell may be a group of anywhere from 4, 5, 6 or more towers that work together and all transmit the same information at the same frequency to provide a much broader area of coverage. It's easier for the dispatcher to dispatch, and it's much easier for the first responders in the field to receive that dispatch and to follow it as they either are en route or transition across that area. For VSP, the 10 zones that were selected are based on the VSP barracks that they currently have, and that's 10 that cover the entire state. The concept here for fire and EMS is to do a similar type of system where we would develop plans and deploy a VHF simulcast system based on individual simulcast cells as well, a collection of simulcast cells. So the difference here is that it would utilize VHF channels, the lower frequency, as I mentioned, 150 to 170 megahertz, that essentially all fire and EMS agencies are using today. You utilize that same frequency range, and it would take existing sites and group them again into simulcast cells, groups of sites, all transmitting the same information. So the simulcast would improve the operation. It would consolidate, lead to consolidation and sharing of infrastructure, which provides a cost improvement as well, a maintenance improvement, would also improve interoperability throughout the area and make interoperability throughout the state simpler, and lead to a more efficient and simplified dispatch process. What we are recommending is a total of 13 simulcast cells, and we'll show the distribution of those shortly. And they are designed to align with existing, what we'll call dispatch zones. So essentially common areas that are typically dispatched either by same or neighboring dispatch centers. We would recommend multiple frequencies or multiple channels in each zone to provide the needed capacity. So instead of having all agencies need to be dispatched on a single frequency pair or channel, we are recommending multiple based on the number of agencies there to reduce congestion. A little more on the detailed process that we followed. Two primary factors to that, looking at the selection of sites and also the selection of frequencies. The selection of sites was, and maybe I'll let Joe go into a little more detail on this, as he was the primary architect of this. But a couple of key points. This was designed, we originally tried various sites using existing sites. One of the key parameters that we use here was existing sites to reduce cost and to eliminate the need to build new sites. We developed an initial design, and then we came back and looked at, in order to keep the estimated cost to the absolute minimum, we chose to use existing state sites that either are currently used and controlled by VSP, or the additional Velco sites that the state is looking to partner with. So, Joe, would you please give a little bit more detail onto? Oh, and one other thing before I hand it over to Joe. Sorry, this is essentially a dedicated script that was developed using propagation analysis, and then analyzing that propagation analysis via a dedicated script to determine the optimal organization for each of these cells.
Sure, thanks,
Joe?
Tom.
Go ahead, please.
So,
Thanks.
the way that we approach this is looking at the marginal benefit of each additional site, making sure that it's adding sufficient benefit to justify its adding to the system. And we set the target at 95% coverage in each of the simulcast cells. So not across the entire state, but each cell needed to try to achieve 95% coverage. And so what we created, we first created the 50 site statewide design, and then we needed to allocate those 50 sites into each simulcast cell. And the fewer sites per simulcast cell reduces the cost, but it also increases the likelihood that we can get frequencies later on. So the bigger the footprint of the simulcast cell, the harder it is to get frequencies for that simulcast cell. So we developed an algorithm to limit the selection of a site to be added to its cell no more than 10 miles outside of that area, to minimize both the number of sites and interference. So the sites in a simulcast cell can interfere with each other based upon certain conditions. We required the contribution of any one individual site to 5% of the area, or in case a particular site would provide a lot of population coverage, also the 5% population coverage was justification for adding that site. And so again, looking at a goal of 95% mobile coverage by area and population, we ran this algorithm to identify which sites go to each simulcast cell, and Dom will present the final allocation of those sites in each simulcast cell. Then we moved on to one of our bigger concerns, given the terrain in Vermont and the area of these simulcast cells, was frequency availability. So, we looked at all of the local license and VHF for the state, and we found nearly 300 unique frequencies that were in use and 600 call signs. And these were considered to be potentially available and are included in the analysis that we're going to present to you a little later. We did a preliminary consideration of Canadian licenses. So half the state is above what's called Line A and has to be coordinated with Canada. So we did a preliminary view of whether or not a site would cause issues with Canadian licenses. What we found was a general difficulty with available frequencies in southern Vermont, especially due to licenses in Massachusetts. And what we present here is a preliminary view. So we did do some sectorization, so directing antennas to the simulcast cell that's intended to serve, to optimize coverage and limit the interference, thereby making it more available to have more frequencies available for that cell. And we did include the industrial pool channels. So there's FCC frequencies are identified by whether they're public safety channels or industrial channels. And the stats included in this presentation does include the industrial channels. Any questions?
Yeah, so on what you just said about the industrial channels, so you're saying that up above where it says more than 300 unique frequencies and 600 call signs, that includes non-public safety frequencies?
To the extent that the localities have channels that are industrial, yes. I don't remember I think some of the channels are industrial that were considered for repurposing for this network. And it's not included in the stats that Dom will present, but there's a fair number of non-in-use channels that we did find that seem to be available on first pass. So it's possible that we might not even need to ask localities to use their frequencies in this network.
So, Don, before you move on, may I also chime in something here? I wanted everyone to understand that focusing the sites on VSP and Velco sites was done for, a particular purpose. I mean, we know that these sites are available. We know that these sites have a shelter, they have a generator, they have backhaul, and these are key elements. However, we didn't, this does not eliminate, and in fact, we encourage that the future radio site also and consider the local radio sites that are out there, because they are serving their communities well today in some cases, and they could be integrated in place of the VSP or Velco sites. The reason that we're on a couple of models, including, what sites we knew were available or that we identified from the FCC database. However, we don't have sufficient information on those sites. We have comprehensive information on the VSP and Velco sites based on interaction with Corey and his team. So we know those sites well. We also know that there are very viable local sites that could one for one replace or one for two replace other sites. We chose not to model them and for this presentation because we just don't know enough about those sites to say whether or not they are available. They do provide good coverage into their communities, and they would certainly need to be considered going forward. It's also important that the final system be a combination of local and state sites, because that's going to give us the best constellation of sites, and that's also going to build trust that it's a locally supported network as well. So we didn't intentionally eliminate, but we didn't include for the reasons I just mentioned. And I see Dan has a question, so yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on that. So in this model, is it possible that this could be expanded to include some of those sites in the future? I'm just trying to think of the layout of this. I mean, I know there's a stand up and an initial project, but I'd like it to be, in my head, it would be very useful if it was that there would be a possibility to say, hey, look, if you want to be part of this, come on in. Or there's a model. I think we're going to have to talk about governance. We're going to have to talk about all this other stuff, but still, to have that flexibility, I think is compelling to me, that it makes sense.
Dan, what you just said is critical, because we're not going to get the buy-in of the locals without their active participation and support, but also integrating the best of their sites into the final constellation of sites is going to be optimal to the performance and costs of the network. So yes, fully agreed. And under a governance model, we anticipate that this evolution of this network would be done under the guidance of a Land Mobile Radio Committee working underneath the governance board, because therefore then we've got all the best and the brightest from local, state, and otherwise, and they are collaborating on this together, because in order to get buy-in, it's got to be network designed by, used by the end users. And so we highly we fully agree with what you just said, that that should be part of. You could have a network and then you could add to the network under you know, a defined model.
So basically that would be like an opt-in, right? I mean, we would have to present the pros and cons, if there are any, of participating in this, and then the individual agencies would make their decision, right?
Yes, on the front end, I mean, the front end is an outreach on this program. So how we've done it in other states where, you know, they're going from independent individual siloed networks to a statewide network is that outreach on the front end to engage the community, get them involved, have them active participation in the design and eventual ongoing operation of the network. So yes, it just as you indicated, Barb, is the right, what we've seen the most successful approach you know, to deploying and operating a statewide radio network.
And I just think about all of the different communities that we've heard from throughout this process that are, you know, doing their own things and wanting to bolt things onto towers and all this kind of stuff. I think this is if done properly, this is an opportunity to at least meet them halfway and say, maybe we can't do it exactly like you had in mind when we originally started this process, but here's a way that you can get improved coverage, better backhaul, better, you know, support, all that stuff, and be part of a broader network. By the way, you don't have to if you want to continue on your own, keep doing what you're doing. That's fine too. To me, that's very interesting.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that I'm in any way thinking of this negatively, because I'm not. I'm very kind of excited by this, but my concern is, you know, first of all, if we're going to build something like this, we don't want to build it unless people are going to use it. We don't want to build another BCOM. So we want to make it appealing. We want agencies to come on board and use it. My concern is that, you know, the reputation around the state radio system, and I understand this, what is being proposed to us today is being designed to eliminate what I'm just going to describe, but the reputation of the state system currently is that it's full of dead spots, you know. So if I'm a local fire chief and being sold on this new program, but I can't use my current tower sites that have served me well for decades. I have to stop using them and get on board with this new system that uses all state towers, which, you know, reputations are what they are. The reputation is that the state system is full of dead spots. It's going to be a hard sell unless, like you just said, Rick, that we need them involved in the planning of this so that they know that this isn't going to be just a patchwork full of holes, that it is actually going to be hopefully an improvement over what they're currently using.
And Paul, what you just said is why I tempered, you know, my statement that we anchored it on these VSP Velco sites because we don't have enough insight into the other sites. However,
Right.
I wouldn't build this network. We wouldn't recommend building this network without their engagement, participation, and incorporation of their sites into the final constellation. We've looked at what we know about those sites. Some of them are better than the other options. Some are actually joint sites. I mean, there are sites that are used by locals and state. You know, we certainly do not want to provide any end user, a local end user, with a network that is not as good as what they currently have. That would be a mistake. And so we want to be sure, you know, that we wanted to prove the concept that we could do this with, you know, a given number of sites. And Joe has assessed, you know, that we can license frequencies both in the U.S. and coordinate with Canada in the design. And we have a budget for this based on the number of sites. We don't, you know, if we add a few more sites, sure, we looked at that. But fully what you said, we do not want to turn off people by having them think that they are not going to be you know, have a say in how this network is deployed and how it's operated. It won't succeed if we don't have it governed under with local management. won't succeed, and it wouldn't be viable to go forward with it.
I think when we're talking about this publicly, we might want to add, like a note on the slides even, or a note on whatever document we're using that briefly outlines, how you develop this using the known sites of VSP and Velco, but we need, this other input, just so it's constantly in front of the audience that this is a kind of a proof of concept, right? Like you said, and that there needs to be other additional conversation and input and collaboration to get to the best end product.
I want to just go out on a limb and say that our experience over the long haul is that a regional statewide network is much cheaper to build and operate over the long haul than it is to operate them individually. So there are cost benefits, long-term cost benefits to building, a network that is available to all end users instead of them each doing it on their own. And then you leverage a pool of talent, and importantly, this is how the network is used and expanded and evolved is done by a committee that meets on a regular basis and talks about pros and cons and next steps and gaps, and it's just it builds a more of a camaraderie also statewide, that we're all in this together, and very interoperable. It needs to be interoperable. It's one of the things we don't have yet. And as I said, it really reduces the burden of the dispatchers in delivering calls for service and for the end users themselves, so that they can communicate with one another. And
I think, I'm a big proponent of this whole idea, but I do, and there's a lot of the other, I have to get behind the whole concept that, I guess where I would go with this is simply, I would refrain from calling this a state network, because the current existing state network, as everybody views it, is the VCOM Lifeline, and the only way that system could have turned out differently in the eyes of the people who were supposed to use it is had it been built on the other side of the equator, where the money would have flushed in a different direction. That's really it. It was a $20+ million flush the money down the toilet project. So I would definitely back off from the terminology of building a state network. That will immediately raise barriers.
how about a statewide network?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of building simulcast cells, I think that is a valid way to approach this. As soon as you start saying it's a state network, people are going to just like turn off their ears, put their fingers in their ears, and start, humming tunes and stuff. And that's not your fault. It's simply the history that we had. When was that project built? Wasn't that like 15 years ago or something like that? So, we doomed ourselves to the current situation, and now we have to figure out how to dig out of it.
And because of that, everyone's going to be super skeptical of it. So I think it needs to be in a regional basis set up, right, and test it out. If you just deploy this network and say, here it is, without the end user actually using it and finding benefit, right, that's going to be the ultimate question, is how well is this actually going to work when it comes to utilizing it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that if you go out there and you say we want to work with you to enhance what you already have, you're on the right footing. As soon as you start proposing something that they look at as something different, something that the state is going to build for them, all of a sudden you're going to lose them.
Okay, thank you. Excellent input and comments. We appreciate that, and we'll certainly work those comments into when we develop a description of this for uh, the legislative briefing.
Hey, Don, before you go on, I want to let everybody know that I have to jump off for a little bit. I'll be listening in, but I've got to take care of something. But so I'm going to go off camera and I'll be here. All right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
All right, thanks.
And Don,
think we get-
one thing, do you have
ahead.
an update of across the state who is in the process of updating their systems currently?
We have much of that information. Yes, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah. We have compiled quite a bit of that, and we know that some of that is going on. Some are have plans, but are pursuing funding, and there's various different phases that some of the groups are in.
I might be getting ahead of myself here, but my question would be, if I have an existing site, Mount Pritchard or Mount Philo or wherever, that's a really good site. What are going to be the requirements for me to participate? What do I need at that site to participate in that? That's one of the questions I'm going to get asked. I guess that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Well, with this concept, it's proposed that a simulcast cell will be developed in these given areas, and then if a local agency has a preferred site that they want to include, it can be incorporated in that design. It would need to utilize the same frequencies that are identified for that simulcast cell, and it will need to have, of course, the facilities to support that. One of the primary reasons I think we've mentioned that we looked at using the existing VSP Velco partner sites was primarily cost driven because of the current facilities that those sites support. They have towers.
I understand. I understand the VSP Velco sites.
Right.
But I know some of those sites won't cover some areas at all or very well. So you're going to have to rely on some of the local infrastructure that's already there and integrate those sites into it.
Right.
So
they would
I'm sorry, Don, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, they would need to have the antennas and base station equipment to support the frequencies proposed at that site, and there would need to be some type of connection, backhaul connection to that site, either through fiber or microwave, for example.
It sounds like there would need to be developed some list of like technical standards almost, or technical requirements, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And
that's kind of what I was looking for.
Yeah. And there must be industry standards related to all that.
Yeah, those can certainly be developed. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, a little further detail. We mentioned 13 simulcast cells. Those are proposed on the map on the right. What you see on the left is our information on the current dispatch assignments by town throughout the state. And of course, the black borders we see are the counties, and those are also depicted in the map on the right. But on the right, the different colors indicate the proposed simulcast cell boundaries. So, for example, in the north, St. Albans in the light green there, together with Grand Isle County would propose is a proposed simulcast cell. And this would, again, this is done primarily based on grouping that we see for the dispatch assignments. It does not mean that each of these cells would have only one dispatch center in that area. There could still be multiple dispatch centers, but each would need to have access to this simulcast cell. And again, these are not etched in stone. Certainly, there could be some adjustments made here. This is merely a suggestion for the concept. And as things develop and as additional information is gained, they may be adjusted, certainly. And again, you'll see the 13 there on the right. And additional information, this shows the sites, all the yellow boxes. Each yellow box there on the map has a either a circle or some type of antenna pattern associated with it, indicating where the site is located and the type of propagation used. So this shows the 50 sites that have been utilized for this concept. And again, the script was written to prefer the essentially mandate the use of the VSP and Velco partnered sites, again, due to the facilities associated with them. We did find it useful to add just a minor number of other sites, the local sites. So there's 47 of the VSP Velco and then 3 local sites to create a total of 50. Now, some of these sites support multiple cells. So for example, if I can get my cursor over here, the Lincoln site here, kind of on the border, supports multiple cells there. So it would be used, so there would be antennas for, or repeaters, I should say, for both those cells. So that's why, while there are 50 physical sites, 50 towers, if you will, there's a total of 84 repeater sites that are used to support this network. As Joe mentioned in his description, in some cases we've used sectorized or directional antennas to minimize interference with other licenses to help with frequency availability. Somebody has a question. Barb, please go ahead.
Yeah, this might be a reflection of just sort of my general, not being really familiar with all of this technology, but you mentioned earlier that this plan or this concept was developed, it was modeled on known VSP Velco sites, and there was a note about 118 sites earlier.
Yes. Yes.
So is
actually,
this like just a subset of that, or?
No, this is the current concept, just the 50. What was shown here earlier was the initial design that we developed, which focused on solely focusing on improved coverage as paramount, as the primary driver. That would drive us to 118 sites. And of that, maybe a quarter of them were the state or Velco sites. But as we look at the estimated cost of that particular network, since we didn't have data on the support of those, the majority of those sites, and you would have to assume that they needed new shelters, they may need tower fortification, they may need generators. That drove the network price up very significantly. So our next approach was, in order to absolutely minimize the anticipated cost, we mandated using the state sites that we know have those facilities already, and we don't have to create those.
Okay, yeah, and I see right there on the slide that you did say it reduced to 50 sites, and I missed that earlier, but thank you.
Not a problem. I also mentioned previously that we've included multiple channels at the various zones, many of them 2 channels, some we've recommended 3 or 4. And again, that is not etched in stone. That's developed for this concept. And based on the required capacity in each of the zones, that can be adjusted. Obviously, that will have cost implications as well. And if, the number of frequencies was not necessarily sufficient for the capacity, you could always use different tones as well for paging and dispatching that would help also segregate traffic. If, for instance, there were a number of agencies, they didn't want to hear everyone else's traffic, you could segregate those using tone. The concept right now uses analog conventional communications. So that means basic analog communications using conventional channels. So that supports, so that's consistent with the radios, the user radios, the handheld portables, and the mobile radios that are currently in use. So this would require no additional investment in user radios to utilize this network. Again, that's obviously a cost impact, and that's why we felt that initially supporting analog conventional would be the right approach. But our recommendation would be, and generally any of the manufacturers that provide the infrastructure, the base station repeaters that would be at these sites, we would recommend that those support digital or Project 25, the default nationwide standard for public safety. We would recommend that the infrastructure support that, so that maybe a few years down the road, if the user radios have been upgraded and can support that as well, you can transition to that P25 type communication. That would enhance interoperability, certainly would enhance interoperability with law enforcement, and also likely with neighboring states. And also, we recognize that transitioning to the digital technology will improve coverage as well. It would improve coverage beyond what we are proposing here, because the digital technology has some advantages. Any questions at this point? Okay, what I'd like to show now is I'd like to go through and step through each proposed simulcast cell. Can somebody mute? I believe somebody had some background noise. And what we're showing here is the black outline is the proposed simulcast cell. Here we're in the Southwest in Bennington, and we're showing an actual propagation map predicted coverage within that cell. I probably shouldn't have started with this one, because this is kind of the worst one we have. This is because we had difficulty with frequency allocations in this particular area. So there was difficulty adding sites in and finding frequencies. But this still meets the minimum 95% coverage mobile. And it's shown here, portable coverage is around 85% in this particular simulcast cell. The colors you're looking at on the map, the weakest signal would be the red. Red would show mobile-only coverage. The light green shows portable coverage, portable, what we call on-street. That means not within a building. And then the darker green is the best coverage. That would mean coverage with a portable inside a building. And Ron, I believe you have a question.
Just to be clear, this is the talk out coverage, not the talk in coverage, correct?
That is correct, yes. What we are showing here is outbound. We, of course, can simulate the inbound or the talk in as well. Of course, outbound is the the stronger link. So inbound will be a little bit weaker, and we can show that. On the mobile side at VHF, generally your outbound and inbound are pretty closely matched. When you use high output mobiles, you can essentially get a balanced link or pretty closely matched. Portable will be weaker. Yes. We identified the potential frequencies within this area, and as Joe mentioned, the southern part was the toughest area of the state that we found. We did, based on current analysis, identify potential for 5 potential frequencies. It could be used as a base or a mobile frequency. So obviously you need one of each to combine to create a channel. So that's what would be required here. This one probably needs a little bit more customization to try and improve coverage and maybe identify additional frequencies. You can see many of these antennas are shown as directional. That was to try and clear more frequencies, and there could be further work done there to try and identify additional available frequencies.
So Dom, quick question, I think. Do I have this correct that we would need to gather through some outreach process information from the agencies in this area to see how this plan would compare to what they have now, right? Do we know it's better, or we don't have enough information to make that determination?
We don't have enough information on every individual local system that's currently being used. Right.
All right, so that would be the next work.
Yes, that would be future work. I agree.
Okay, thanks.
I think that as you want to work with the stakeholders, that the 2 maps that they need to be presented with, because they're really the critical ones, is the portable talk-in coverage and the pager coverage for their particular areas, because those, at least for fire and EMS, are the most critical, and it's what they're most attuned to. In EMS, I don't know that the portable coverage is as important. They all have radios in their ambulances and stuff, but I think that they're all familiar with that, and they can look at a map of pager coverage and say, my house is there, and right now I hardly have any signal, but this map says it's going to be a lot better. So they're able to relate on that level.
Great. Thanks, Ron. That's very helpful. One other point, Barb, to your question, is that where there are local systems that are very localized, this would, in general, has the capability to provide better coverage because you're utilizing numerous sites within this area. So you may get contribution from various sites as opposed to those local areas that may just have 1 or 2 sites in their network.
Got it. Thanks.
Generally, the coverage looks better in most of the other simulcast cells. As you'll see, this is the proposed Burlington cell. And again, the black outline shows the proposed cell. Kind of odd here is that the sites are generally around the cell, not within. And again, of course, that's because we focused on those existing sites that have the facilities, which admittedly may not be the optimal sites for coverage, but again, we did that based on existing facilities capability and cost. But even with the sites surrounding that area, this shows very robust coverage within that area. The majority of it, again, this is outbound, shows actually in-building coverage at the portable level. In this particular area, we would recommend 4 channels, and again, we'll look for local input on that. But 4 channels because we realize there's a lot of agencies in this area. We did find that in this case, there were many frequencies that appear to be available. When we say many here, it's probably dozens that we found that were clear that could potentially be used for this simulcast. So, and stepping through the next one, this would be the proposed cell for Capitol Fire area. And again, these names again are just well, Capitol Fire has a fairly well defined area, but some of the others, the names of the cell were just something that was proposed here for this concept, and is certainly subject to update based on what makes sense for that particular area. So again, we show the sites that are used here to provide coverage in this area, the predicted outbound coverage. Again, at VHF, and I will note for those of you again not familiar with radio, the state VSP, of course, uses many of these sites here. That is a UHF network. And the VHF network, which is modeled here, generally provides better coverage because VHF at the lower frequency provides or propagates better over a larger area. So generally, if you have a given site and you have a UHF repeater and a VHF repeater, and you look at coverage, you will get broader coverage from the VHF repeater just due to the physics of propagation. This one's a bit challenging again on the frequency side, where we would want 2 channels, which would be 4 total frequencies, 2 base and 2 mobile. We see this somewhat challenging there in terms of finding those, but we did identify a number that are potentially available. And just to step through the others for completeness, we proposed an Essex cell. And I do acknowledge, Paul, you had a comment. Maybe this isn't necessarily necessary to have an individual Essex cell. It could potentially be combined with a neighbor. That's something that we could certainly look into. And in the north area, we did find better frequency availability, so it could be a potential. But generally, when you make the cells bigger, it makes it more difficult to clear frequencies to be used throughout that entire area. So those are the trade-offs that we would have to look at in order to determine if we wanted to combine cells. We have the cell that covers a large portion of Orange County here. Again, we've identified the sites that are currently being used, the number of channels that we've proposed, and the frequencies that we identified based on our initial research. And similar, talking through the proposed Hartford cell. Again, this one, again, a challenge, showing 4 base and 4 mobile frequencies currently. Lamoille cell. Here we see a large number of frequencies available. Newport up north. Potential Wyndham cell in the south. Again, this one challenging on the frequency side, where we show 3 potential base and 4 potential mobile frequencies available. Again, the south side being the most challenging, as Joe mentioned. And those are the 13 I stepped through. We had put together an estimated cost for this network based on the number of sites, and you'll see the table to the right indicates the 19 different simulcast cells, or I'm sorry, 13 different simulcast cells, the number of sites that are proposed. And again, this refers to the number of repeater sites, not so this number would add up to 84, not 50, if you add the number of sites for all of those. So that's where there would be 84 times the equipment necessary to support these. We have indicated the number of channels proposed in each of these cells. And again, that's certainly adjustable, and have estimated the equipment and installation costs for those for that level of equipment. That's based on recent proposals that we've seen within the state for equivalent equipment. The second area of the table shows additional potential site improvements, and this is these costs are very low for the site improvements, shelters, generators, etc., because we're primarily focusing on the existing sites in use by VSP and Velco. If we utilized additional local sites, those costs would, we anticipate, would increase significantly. Also, the backhaul, we're showing backhaul required from each of these sites, but we anticipate, hopefully, if this were built out for these sites, that we could utilize the existing backhaul potentially that VSP is using, and some of that funding there could potentially be reduced. Again, the assumptions are shown here: better than 95% mobile coverage, various number of channels based on the different cells, and all cells use conventional simulcast that support analog and future P25. And then we have dual simulcast, what we call voting sites, for redundancy in each cell. Ron, I believe you have a question.
Yes, I do. I just had to find my mute button. So I will take the areas that I know about and ask questions based on those. So, for example, the Shelburne zone, which appears on the map, as I recall, to include most of Addison County, yes, and some of Chittenden County.
Correct.
Does that plan allow for frequency, independent frequencies for the Addison County departments and the Chittenden County departments, or is the plan to attempt to combine them and watch the explosion?
That would be something that would have to be worked out. Right here, you're seeing, per this cost estimate, it utilizes 3 channels. So those would have to be divided up amongst the various agencies within that cell. However, it made sense. So with 3, you could certainly have, one for the Addison County agencies, one for the Chittenden County agencies, and then an additional one depending on how that worked. So we could potentially leave that up to you to work out.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think the way that the individual counties would divide it up is one for Addison County, one for Chittenden County, and the other frequency for the people who talk way too much on the radio, but that's another issue altogether. All right. So, and then when you get to St. Albans, I'm seeing that, that map, I'm assuming includes Grandal County and Franklin County and maybe parts of something else.
Looking for that. I'm scrolling up to that. I may have gone by it already. Sorry.
They're alphabetized. You're too far.
Oh, okay. Sorry. What's that, Joe? What number was it?
I don't recall. I thought they were alphabetized.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the St. Albans one. Somehow that might have gotten, maybe they somehow got left off.
Yeah, but if you
I
go to
didn't
the
see it.
slide that shows
Well,
the whole
if I
state,
go back to the, oh, sorry, hopefully not making you dizzy here. If I go back to this map, that shows, you know, yeah, it does include the Grand Isle County, right?
Right.
And
So,
Franklin County.
so I think that becomes the same issue. Like, for example, from my standpoint, being a chief of a Grand Isle agency, we currently have 4 sites that share the same frequency, and what we lack is simulcast voting part. But there's no way that any one of those 8 chiefs would sign on to share frequencies with all the Franklin County agencies. It just wouldn't happen. The only thing what we really need right now is to connect those sites, and all of our coverage issues are actually would need to be filled in from the New York side of the lake, because that's really our the place where we have problems is around the lakeshore on the west side. So I think that some of that stuff needs to be more seriously. I suppose that it's very difficult for those who don't exist here on a regular basis to really truly absorb the politics of the situation.
Right. Understood. Yes. So we recognize that most likely needs to be some modification and tweaking. Certainly, the intent was to provide a concept that we feel is workable, recognizing that there would need to be a lot of local input and coordination and buy-in, certainly. But this is what we have in terms of the concept, and that completes the presentation. So we're happy to address any other questions.
Thank you, Dom. And let's see, I see Michael Wright's hand is up. Go ahead, Michael.
Dom, I don't know if it was missed, but I don't see that St. Johnsbury one either. I see that
Yeah,
Spar. I was just curious if you could either send that out via email, add the missing ones or whatever. I just would like to see that. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize. Not sure why those others aren't included here, but they were when we first put this together. Sorry.
So
Yep.
I'd like to propose that maybe we need to think a little bit about the way we present some of this stuff. Dropping back to that whole Addison County example, with 13 agencies on 10 repeaters and things. I think it would be a valuable exercise that could be used, both for the Addison County agencies and for agencies around the state. If a propagation map was developed for each of those 10 repeaters, so that you could sort of like click through them and show, well, you've got this propagation and this site 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 and this site. And oh, by the way, if we do what we're proposing, then this is what it looks like, without having to dedicate 10 channels in your radio and have a little map where you determine which one of those sites you're going to use.
Right.
I mean, because we all know that when you talk about radio stuff, first responders, they tend to glass over, and it's like kind of like talking to the people down at the old folks home. They don't have their hearing aids turned on, and they're in various levels of paying attention to you. And in this case, they don't understand it, and they're not going to ask any questions. So you sort of need to animate it and have flashing lights and stuff.
Appreciate that input. Thank you, Ron.
Right. Jim Mack, go ahead.
Yeah, from a starting point, I like what this is, but I agree with Ron on we need to also show the portable inbound, because if you're selling it to my agencies, That's the piece that they look at. You know,
Okay,
if I move, say, Charlotte Fire, which I won't because they'll be on Mount Philo, that's where they are today. But when they moved from their previous site, they shifted dead zones, and then all of a sudden they didn't realize that they had just moved their dead zones.
sure.
So they really need to see that to be able to say, yeah, we want to buy into this.
Agreed.
But
Thanks,
like I
Jim.
said, I do like this as a starting point.
So it sounds like, well, and of course, in the recommendations that went to the legislature, there was a line item for 5 million to do some work that would be foundational to this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dom.
That's correct, Barb.
And so, that money would go towards reducing that total with contingency level. And I just will offer that Dom said he would pay for this when he wins the Powerball. So
Absolutely, it's on my list. It's already committed.
so anyway, but there are also various ideas, if you will, for the funding of this. But I think this goes a long way towards providing the legislature with what they asked us to provide, and then see where it goes from there. So what is the next step with this? Is it for Dom and Rick to take our feedback today and continue to develop this concept? Does everyone agree?
Yes, I agree. But also include the missing
Yeah.
zones and put
Oh,
the
yeah,
portable
yeah,
feedback.
I apologize for that. I'm not sure how that happened
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
because they were
Yeah, Jim,
developed.
I don't know if you agree with this, but from my perspective, Jim, I think that the most of the agencies want to see two things. They want to see their portable inbound and they want to see their
Right.
paging coverage.
Yes.
Got it.
And
And
if we
then
go out
again,
and sell,
I think
if we
it's
go out to sell this to agencies, as Ron was pointing out, showing them what their current sites are doing compared to what we're offering up here with this will help out on changing their minds.
well, and making sure they know that we're open to conversation about using different sites, right? And
Yes.
all of that. So maybe that flashing light on all of the slides as well might be helpful. So any other input from task force members on where to go next with this concept?
I think that, if you're going to go forward with the concept, then I think probably you need to sort of dangle the carrot there for everybody, both for the legislature, like we know where we're going from here, give them some sense that this is just not like a vague idea that we came up with while we were having our coffee in the morning, and the first responders who are currently sitting around going, yeah, this is great, it's just not going to ever happen. I think that while they're looking at all this information, they need to look at some of the areas that might be potentially pilot projects that could be developed with minimal risk of failure.
Mm-hmm. That was one of my questions too, is how quickly would the end users see the improvements, right? And I think when I asked that question of Rick and Dom, they came back with the possibility of pilot projects in a specific area to see how it works. So
Yeah, certainly that's an option.
anything, go ahead, Rick.
Yes, before we move on from this topic, I wanted to confirm a couple things because there's been a lot of great discussion, and I was listening in, and I didn't chime in because the answers were given. But the point that was that Jim and Ron both brought up about the reverse link, understood. We design networks based on the reverse link. And that's, that's just how networks are designed, because that is the weakest link in the communication. So, hats off to you for bringing that up. That's the right approach. But I did want to go back to the point about Addison County. And I think, we could model Addison County, using, the existing sites, but we need to have that information provided to us so that we know what it is. If we go searching for it, we're not going to be using our time and dollars properly. So, Jim can help facilitate getting that information to us. That would that would be that would reduce the effort, amount of time so it'd be more judicious use of everyone's time. If we go and try to find it, there's just no way that you can interpret everything in the FCC database. There's a lot of information that isn't consistent. Who the operator is and who the contact is, and there's just if that information could be provided to us, we can model it and do a comparison, of a given area. Because I don't think it wouldn't be wise at this point to do the whole network with all the existing sites. That's just not where we're at. But to provide a model to show, to prove the concept. So here's what's there today, and here's what could be here tomorrow. That would also give us an opportunity to potentially swap in a site or two from the existing constellation to better sites that are there. As I mentioned in the very beginning, we didn't, we agree that has to be the final approach, but we chose this path to prove the concept. We're comfortable that we prove the concept and the budgetary numbers work. We just, to go to this next level, we want to use our time prudently. So any help that you could provide in that would be beneficial, Jim.
So, hey, Jim,
Yeah.
I think what I was about to say was, I mean, I see what you guys have done. You've done a lot of work, and I think it's all valid, but I think that maybe you're misinterpreting that. It's not that I think you need to prove your network. I think now we need to market the network. And that's a totally different thing. When I look at it, you can send me piles of stuff and I can look at it and I can tell what that's all about and what I think from a technical perspective, but you're never going to use the same information to sell it to the stakeholders. In a rare bit of stakeholder, I think Dean Gilmore from Addison County is actually on this meeting. If he's willing to chime in about how to set up that cooperation, that would be great. Dean, are you in there? He's the guy with the 98 on the end of his phone number, I think.
Oh,
I don't see him now.
No, he's in there. There's a 9A at the end.
I see someone with the last four digits of 4198.
Yeah, that's him.
Dean, is that you? And actually, we're about to move on to public comment, but in response to Ron's inquiry, do you have anything to add? Okay, he might not be tuned
I'm
in
not sure
exactly
where he
right
is.
now. Okay, well, so I just want to go back for a minute and confirm, Jim, are you able to help with the gathering of this
Yeah.
information? Okay. All right, so I'll let you and Rick and Dom work together on that. I think we should move on to public comment. Are we in agreement on where we're going with this? To continue to show the portable inbound numbers, or whatever the correct terminology is, because that's what responders care about. And Jim is going to work with Rick and Dom on some more detail on Addison County. Is there anything else, Paul? Go ahead.
Yeah, just to confirm, we're not planning to include this granular of detail in the report that's being created for the legislature in January, right?
Actually, that was a question I had too. It would be a higher level, I would assume, right?
I don't think the legislature needs that information.
I don't think so either. I would not be in favor of that. I think unless you happen to find somebody down there who is really interested in this stuff, I think it's just going to add to their glossing over factor.
Is
Okay.
it possible that we could hold our own little legislative meeting for those who are interested, potentially convincing them to be interested by having, the first responder community pressure their legislators to actually take an interest?
I think.
I
if we
don't
hel-
think
if we
that's
held-
outside the realm. Yeah.
No, especially if we held it on a Monday when they're not in session, and then invite them to come.
Right. I think we're waiting on, I still haven't heard any feedback from the legislative recommendations we sent over. And I don't believe Dan has either from the administration side. So, but I think it would be good to offer an informational session to those that are interested, but not include it in the report, Paul, as you suggested.
Right.
Okay.
Well, just before you leave, Barb, I just wanted to, Paul and Jim, no, we had no intention of trying to, cram this detail into a final presentation report to the legislature. We've agreed that no more than 15 to 20 pages. Well, if we put in the maps, that'll take up 10 pages. So, there's no way. That was part, that's not part of the approach. We did this, to validate, one, the budget that we had proposed, and two, to show the conceptual design, that it is achievable. But it's not achievable if we don't get buy-in at the legislator and from the locals. And so outreach is key. If we're supportive of this, it has to be done with the participation and the buy-in of the state, of a broader community. I mean, and we've seen this be done very successful. However, it's not successful if there's not, a support at a level that's going to provide some funding for it. And we can work out the mechanics of ongoing operational expenses and how that's funded. And we have provided Barb and Dan and Paul some ideas and to the task force about how these big budgetary items can be funded. So we are going to share some ideas, but we're not going to go any deeper than, an overview that on this concept into the final report to the legislature.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well, I think we'll have you incorporate the feedback from today. Maybe we'll distribute another iteration of that presentation would be helpful for me anyway. And if we're good on this topic now, I'm going to move on to public comment. Any objection? Okay. All right, so we do have looks like at least two members of the public. Senator Renner, would you like to add anything today?
Hi, thank you. No, great to see the maps and bit of concepts. Always interested in seeing a pilot set up first to get people to buy into the concept. So thanks so much.
Great, thank you. And I've already forgotten the name, Dean, I think, with the Dean at 4198. Do you have anything you would like to add? Okay, sounds like not. And just to be sure I haven't missed anyone, is there any other public comment?
Barb, can you hear me now?
I can. Is this Dean?
Okay. Yes. Sorry about that. It's a new phone, trying to figure it out.
Oh, no problem. Go right ahead.
So I am certainly willing to get whatever information is needed as far as repeaters and that sort of stuff from Madison County. I know that we had a meeting last night, and this was one of our things that we talked about is making sure that we do whatever we can to help the task force out. I'm certainly, if somebody sends me a list of what they need, I certainly will make sure they get what they need.
That sounds great. Let me ask this, Jim or Ron, do you have Dean's contact info, or should we have him plunk it down in the chat?
I have
I
these.
I have it as well.
Okay, all right. So I'll let the two of you coordinate with Rick and Dom to get to get in touch with Dean. Thank you, Dean.
An introductory email would be perfect if you could do that, and then we can go from there.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
That sounds great. Okay, any other public comment? Right then, we'll jump over to new business. Any new business for today? All right, that's easy. All right, so our next meeting is on the books for January 7th at 11:15. So you're actually going to get the holidays off. And before we break for the holidays, though, I do want to take a moment to thank everybody, all of the task force members, our partners at Televate and Mission Critical, our admin support, Emily, and all of the stakeholders who have joined us along the way for the hard work, the input, the feedback, the commitment shown to the project throughout the year. I think we'd all agree it was at times a heavy lift and a heavy time commitment. And I certainly appreciate everyone's efforts to get us where we are. I think we're much further along in this discussion than probably has ever been in the state. So I'm wishing everybody a very happy holiday season, and we will see you all in the new year, assuming, of course, there's a motion to adjourn today.
So moved.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right,
Seconded.
perfect. Okay. All in favor of adjourning, raise your hand or signify by saying aye. All right.
Aye.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Happy holidays. We'll talk to everyone soon.
Thank you,
Happy
Barb.
holidays,
Thank you,
everyone.
Happy
everyone.
holidays.
Take care.
Enjoy.